Good afternoon, everyone. It's basically, I assuming this would be a last session just before the lunch, so kindly bear with us. We will hold you off for another 40 minutes, but believe me, this will be an interesting discussion. And it's really my pleasure to be here. We know Mr. Jagdish, you couldn't make it because of the last minute commitment, but glad that you could make it online. So at least, we could have the conversations on this important topic that we have. So let me start with introducing myself. As I said, Amit Saluja, I head the NASCOM center in Gandhi, Nagar. The center basically has been set up by Ministry of Electronics and IT to provide an ecosystem for the manufacturing digitization in the country. Considering manufacturing companies, while we have been talking about the digitization since long, but we are still not there, and which is why the center has been established, so that we can augment the efforts of the manufacturing companies on their digital journey, and then that's what we do. And so maybe while we start with the conversation, the one basic question I would like to bring it up is basically we are hearing about smart manufacturing, industry 4.0, digital manufacturing. So all of these are same words we have been hearing since long. But where are we actually right now? How close are we to calling ourselves in the country that we are heading towards the smart manufacturing? And there is a lot of myths are also there, like I've had the pleasure of visiting more than 100 manufacturing companies in the last 6-7 months, and a lot of times it comes up whether it is automation or the digitization, correct? So a lot of times automation is also thought over as just the digitization. There are examples where companies feel that when we have automated our support processes, like having an ERP in place or having other stuff in place, then companies feel that they are digitized. But how much of the manufacturing processes have we digitized that's where the question comes up, and which is why I would like to get thoughts from our panelists today on where you feel we are. And so maybe Mr. Jagdish, can we start with you and get your thoughts on, so maybe say from your organization, say from Hindalco, how do you say that how ahead you are in the smart, and then calling ourselves as a smart manufacturer? And then if you can give us also your perspective, manufacturing industry, on where are we on the digitization efforts?
Okay, I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
So I'll just, first of all, I'm a sincere apologies for not being there physically, and also in the interest of time and not spoiling the lunch, I will keep it very brief. When we talk about smart factory or smart manufacturing, for me, the cycle starts from plan to produce, what we typically call as a plan to produce, right? So that's operations. So for any manufacturing industry, the area that we really focus in plan to produce is smart scheduling, number one. Number two, how do we increase or make sure we have the factories available and utilized 100% of the time? Turnaround time of your product from the time it enters the floor or the manufacturing until it gets out of the factory into the truck, and then we could just enhance that into from truck to the customer. And then the tag time. And typically for us, tag time is not so important, but we do have a huge focus on turnaround time. And then critical assets uptime. Am I able to keep my assets uptime 100% of the time? And the next one is quality consistency. And I'm not talking about quality, I'm talking about quality consistency. How do we make sure that day in and day out we produce consistent quality? And from a safety perspective, workforce safety and workforce productivity. And the last one is the overall productivity, overall factory health. So I will paint the big picture in terms of what we are trying to do. So imagine a plant head walks in, and then he is told that, the factory health is very good. You don't need to worry about equipment failures. There is unlikely to be breakdowns tomorrow. You are likely to produce good quality consistency. There are no safety deviations that is seen in the plant. and your raw material availability is all good. Scheduling has been done. So for the next 3 days, your factory is likely to run with full efficiency with no major deviation. So this is what we are attempting. And when you attempt to do, this is what for us is a smart factory. And the fundamental to a smart factory is that everybody in the factory is able to use the data to improve his or her own area of operations. So we are not looking at a smart factory which just runs with algorithms and models which people do not understand. We are looking at on the highest level where there's a health indicator for the plant head, and the lowest level where the supervisor and even the operators are able to get alerts when systems do not work as per the plan, and they're able to take actions on alerts. So this is the two spectrum of what we are trying to do in a smart factory. And the fundamental thing here is, you spoke about ERP, in the previous session we spoke about ERP, right? ERP for us is a transaction system, right? But how are you able to act on the data that is getting thrown at you when you are during production, which basically helps you to remove alerts. In a manufacturing plant, all of us know that there will be hundreds of alerts, right? So typical system is many of the times you suppress the alerts and then clear it as a false alert. So now we said, no, nothing is a false alert. Every alert that you're getting out of a data, which can be on the DCS or on the IoT platform, it doesn't matter. But can we reduce the number of alerts in the plant? And each area owner, the goal that is given to him is reduce the number of alerts. If you are reduce the number of alerts using data, that means you are becoming better. You are becoming better in safety, you are becoming better in abnormalities in the equipment, you are becoming better in terms of productivity. So that's the way we are looking at it. And we see a huge traction that you give people the data that is relevant to them, teach them a few tools, and say, look at it every hour and improve. And on the highest level is build models, AML models for a plant head to know the health of the factory, that when he walks in, he knows for the next 24 hours or 48 hours, my factory is going to, probability of my factory running very well is very high. That's exactly how we are positioning the smart manufacturing.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Jagdish, for laying out the definition of a smart factory. I think which is what I really wanted to bring out, this whole concept, what all the smart factory will include, correct? So I think it's very apparent that this is not just the ERP. This is way beyond the ERP, and in fact ERP is not even mandatory that ERP definitely will have a big plus, but to automate the production, or not, I am using the wrong word, to digitize the production processes, there is definitely a lot more scale which needs to be driven. And then Mr. Jagdish also highlighted the different areas that comes under smart manufacturing. Now, if you really have to implement it, the biggest work that comes up is, how do I start, where to start, how to start? I think these are the questions that comes up, and I was listening to the previous panel discussion also. There were a bit of a discussions there happened also. How do you really build a roadmap for an organization? Because a lot of time it happens that organizations when start the digital journey, there are few initiatives gets defined and it gets implemented, and later on the results doesn't come, and the major reason of that is there was not an integrated approach right at the start. There was no roadmap. It was more of a doing some ad hoc implementations, and then later on realizing maybe we could have done it something in a different way. So which is why I think I really wanted to spend some time with all the panelists and get their thoughts, because they all come with a different industry, different perspective. So I think it will be good to get a thought process on how do you build a digital roadmap for your organization, because that actually will define the success of your digital initiative. So Yogesh, maybe start with you first. So what would be your advice for the companies who are looking to build a digital roadmap?
So first of all, thank you for, am I audible okay? Okay, good. So first thing first, thank you for the invite. Being here along with these eminent leaders from the industry, from the manufacturing background, definitely makes a happy face overall. And being in person after a couple of years, it definitely makes a difference. From the whenever somebody want to call it as smart factory or automation in their processes, or bringing discrete manufacturing processes and etc. You can choose the words that you want to. Bottom line is, are we helping organization grow? Are we supporting the bottom line? And are we making sure that the yield that we get out of our processes is more than yesterday? That's the automation for me. If the enhancements are towards the betterment of the work-life balance, betterment of the production, and betterment for the financials. These three are aspects: people, process, and plant, typically. For that, whichever tool that you use, it really does not matter. Even if you do not have any tool, it also does not matter. Tools do not make smart processes. Smart processes, again, and there is a very, very different concept that automation is smart. That's not like that. I mean, that's my experience. Someone can, please feel free to correct me. Automation can streamline your processes. It's the integration of the processes that makes your work processes smart, and your culture in the organization that brings out the yield of that at the end of the day. So whether you have 100 tools in the system or you have only one tool, doesn't matter. And to be very frank, in my organization, typically we definitely take a proud point in that we may, when in 2017 odd, we may have 1,000+ applications. Today we don't, because we don't need them. If the baseline on the expenses of IT systems is cleared, we don't need them. We can reduce, definitely, and channelize the existing applications. For that, someone may have to work on cohesive operations, someone may have to work on segmentation of those applications and the duties internally, and typically integrate it with your application, which is from your production side. It may or may not be your ERP. That's what I would say. I can keep on and on, but I know there is we are in between this session and a lunch, so definitely want to take it forward. Thank you.
Sure. Vikram, your thoughts on building a digital roadmap for the organizations? I mean, say, how are you doing in your Mahindra group, or any advice for the people who are looking to build it?
I'll take a very generic stand for this.
I don't think so.
Are we good? All right, thanks. So the generic stand is that as digital transformation professionals, there's a standard landscape of things that you can and cannot do. Right? We come with the definitions of experience and excellence / efficiency being the menu card for disruption. Right? And there are different levers in every organization that are that lead to some of these parameters that lead to experience and efficiency. Organizations that need some fundamental changes with respect to having a strong data quality that can drive autonomous decisions. Organizations that are looking to enter new markets where a GTM for multiple countries or multiple states is the need of the hour. So data quality and the ability to pursue new markets is the necessity. So the front end of the business and the back end of the business, they literally have to work together in order to create these loops between efficiency and experience. So where I'm going is that the digital roadmap is a fundamental improvisations that the organization has to do in order to be considered ready for transformational initiatives, which is part B of the digital roadmap. So if you are trying to launch a product A to a market B, then you must be ready with, let's say, A, a content management suite, B, a customer experience suite, see a way to address your channel management and marketing and manufacturing. So all of these get to fundamental changes and these levers change from organization to organization, right? So in terms of our weaknesses into quality, or our weaknesses into sales experience, or our weaknesses into global logistics, right? So fundamental changes are different for different organizations, and the transformative targets, the horizons are almost the same for many organizations. So we may chase almost the same goals, almost the same customers, almost the same products and segments, but where it changes is how we adjust our foundation to be transformational enough, and that is the digital roadmap.
Okay, great. So I think you are more talking about the looking at the individual functions, identifying the challenges there in those individual functions, and then come up with a way to transform those functions. So that's kind of in one way. So Jagdish, your thoughts like on how do you see it happening in the Hindalco, or the way you feel that's the best way of building a roadmap for the organization?
I think, it's very easy to build a roadmap sitting in the office, and some of us like CDOs, we are good in putting it on PPT and making a roadmap. But the important thing is, how are you going to get it executed on the shop floor, right? So that is why this evolves, and there is one answer to it, evolves, right? First, when you start the journey, you have to basically tell people, how can I improve your work? Okay, for them, they don't understand roadmaps. They understand, okay, tell me how my work can become more efficient. Tell me how I can become better. That you start from there. And slowly you build into small projects, right? You do small projects and let people do any amount of projects. Don't tie them up with a KPI in the beginning. Let them experiment. And then maybe after 18 months, you get to a standpoint where the people are digitally educated, aware, and then you start to say, now how do I tie all of that you guys know into a factory KPI? And what is the factory KPI? Am I on time in my production? Am I on time? Am I good quality in terms of quality factory? Then you tie it up with a business KPI. So for us, it's very easy to say, start digital and turn it and align it to business KPI. But that doesn't happen on day one. To reach a level of maturity where you're able to tie your digital ambitions into impacting business KPI, we have taken around 3 to 3.5 years to reach that stage of maturity where we can discuss with people in terms of how does digital tie with the business KPI. But we started seeing that how does the digital availability of data improve your work, and simple mechanism. The only KPI we took was you have 60 alerts last month, reduce it to 50 alerts. That's what people understand, because transformation, this digital transformation, digital roadmap is all for executives like us. But how do you translate that into what does it mean to the shop floor, the engineers, the process engineers, the quality engineers, the maintenance engineers? And that's where I think it gets stuck. So build a roadmap at a factory level first, doesn't matter. Let them see what are my top 10 issues in the factory that I need to address. Each factory does it. Let's say you have 5 factories. Each factory encourage them to solve their small problems. So be it. It's okay. Small problems are getting solved. But at least they're getting used to the culture of using data. And once you know that they're comfortable using the data that they have, you will also realize, amazing realization you'll have, people are going to come back and tell you where they are facing problems with non-availability of data. When you reach that stage, you really know, now I can start talking big things. Then you take them to, okay, if I do so many things, how am I impacting the EBITDA of the factory? How am I impacting the profitability? How am I impacting the customer returns? That's the time for you to start at a factory KPI. And then next maturity is organizational KPI. So that is how we are building. Okay? There are 2 approaches. One is top down and second is bottom up. It's your choice. And for me, both have to go hand in hand.
Oh, great, thank you. I think so. This actually, I think the panelists have brought in a very, very diverse perspective. And then if I have to kind of bring them together, so like Jagdish talked about a KPI-driven approach. So the roadmap has to align with the KPIs, because that's where the business benefits will come in, so which is extremely important. Other thing which came out was basically at a function level, correct? I mean, so you need to identify the challenges or the things at a functional level and then integrate them into an organization level. So each function there will be their own issues, but so at each function, I mean, if you identify things and then combine them together at an organization level. Third thing basically came up is basically start small and then kind of an scale. So basically get into the habit of using the technology to save the cost for your organization, to improve the efficiencies and productivity in the organization. So I think that's where is the start small and then but then the scale. So I think from there the model definitely can be, the one way is basically assess all your processes at an individual function level and a complete organization level processes, assess those processes and then link it with the where your costs are more. So like either the material cost is more in the plant, or the time to market is more, or labor cost is more. So wherever even maybe the energy cost is more. So wherever then cost, link it with the cost and then link it with the organization's KPIs to really build up a plan. I think once you build up in this, with this approach, the chances of success will kind of increase. So thank you. I think this was a great discussion. Next, let me kind of move to another big thing. So we have seen now in many organizations, we have got into the paperless, correct? So while at an SME level, it is still the registers or the notebooks are being used, but in majority of the organization, we have kind of gone into the paperless. But the challenge which we still see is, while we have become paperless, but still the data which is there, which is getting generated on a daily level every day, that data is really not getting fully utilized to give us a real-time insight or a decision making for the organization. So maybe let's discuss on this point also on data is there are tons of data, it is available, but the effective decision making is not happening in the organization. So what can we do to basically build a data-driven organization in our plants? So anyone? So Vikram, like, you want to go with?
Question is, what can we do to enable data towards better decisions?
Yes.
Right. So in order so there's data, then you have insights, then you have decisions, then you have...
Yeah, so right now, like, we have a lot of data which is available in the plants, but that data is not effectively getting utilized and analyzed. So how companies can move towards the analysis of the data to take real-time decisions for the organizations?
Okay. So in case there was data being collected without cognizance of what to do with it, then that's audit worthy, right? So that's not where we'll go. Where we'll go is, how do we collect and organize data that drives meaningful decisions and then to value, right? So the ability for us to drive the right data generation is to figure out what is value. Let me give you an example. You can right now track container locations, let's say, right? So it helps only when you can reroute containers, drive to an early ETA, and drive to an early port clearance, and so on, until you can drive to an early ETA for the customer. So that is value, right? We are assuming that we live in a hyper-connected world where all of these points give you the right clean data at right points to generate that value. Having said that, I am totally ignoring the fact as to the ETA could be the nth valuable parameter for customer experience, right? The receipt of on-time logistics could be the xth parameter in terms of inventory management, depending on how much inventory the organization's policy holds, right? So all of these put together, where I'm going is that as long as you don't know the problem you're solving, it does not make sense to collect that data, to respond to your first question, all right? Because the shelf life of data is really unknown, Right? There are organizations which hoard data for 5 years, and then sometimes it's valuable, sometimes it's not. So one, collect, organize, have strong data governance to ensure that these data points can lead to autonomous decisions or at least semi-autonomous decisions. And that said, that it has a direct line to value. Right? So figure out what is the future of computing, or what is the future of customer experience. Will we have shared factories? Will we have biometric transactions? And all of these need different data points that are not tapped in the current process at all. So ensure what you want to do, then drive down to what decisions are must-haves, and then drive to what insights or signals will lead to those decisions, and then collect the relevant data, right? So that's how I do, and that's how.
Yeah, so it's more about saying, I mean, building a rigor in the organization to really look through, I mean, what data it is important, and then work towards having a dashboards or maybe analytics engines in place to take it.
Drive to what is customer value, drive to what is EBITDA for you, what
Sure.
is it that you want to do, and then collect data.
Sure. Yeah. Yogesh?
It's a very simple and as well as a difficult question. Okay, but thank you for asking it. In one of the presentations earlier, I saw that it was written, data is one of the crown jewel in the organization. I kind of agree, but do not completely agree to that, because where data is produced is more important than where it is represented. For example, Excel file created in one of my workstation is not that important for me. However, the data which is scanned, which is going to lead towards the dashboard representation from my conveyor belt is critical for me. So again, and I'll borrow some of the words from Vikram and tell what do we do with that data. And then many a times if we talk about ERPs is a garbage in, garbage out. So data needs to be filtered out, chunked, massaged before it's entered and checked before it enters into any ERP. Now for that, the mechanisms which I need to have in place, probably, the filtering systems, probably the accuracy point of view, that data analysis needs to happen before that in that filtering process. And at the last, I was in my earlier question, I answered about the separation of your duties at the shop floor. For example, if there is a technician, I don't want a technician to take a keyboard, type on the problems that he facing while inspecting my final good. I just want him to press green, yellow, red buttons, that's it. I don't want the technician to invest time, because that's not his primary job. His primary job is to make that car seat accurate enough so that it can be shipped. So once the technicians press a green button, it should go ahead to the next workstation. If it is yellow, it should go to the rework. If it is red, it should go towards rejection, and the next working station should take action on it subsequently. And that's where the real essence of automation comes into the picture, because we enhance that technician's work, and he is focusing on that job which he or she is supposed to do, rather than we doing or we providing them. It's not empowering them, by the way. So people use that as by giving a keyboard or iPad, I empower technician to do. No, we are actually giving our job to them to do it, and they will not do their job efficiently. That happens, and that's a misconception in automation. All right, thank you.
Great, thanks. So maybe one more thing I think I want to. So Mr. Jagdish, you talked about an earlier response that I think that was advice you had was that we should get into these savings, like take a baby steps, correct? Get into the art of, learn the art of how do you kind of save cost, and by taking small initiatives. So what would be your recommendation on, say, maybe on, say, few use cases or few areas where you will suggest on at least the areas where that should be explored for the digitization point of view? So maybe you can say low hanging fruits, or the companies that basically should really look those things as the basic level things that should be digitized.
Okay, good question. It depends on your, first of all, the kind of industry you are in and your own maturity on where you are. And when I talk about it, if you take automobiles, probably they are much more advanced, because with a lot more of automation versus a commodity player like us, where the level of automation varies. So first is, when you're talking about savings, it depends on how good you are today. Are you an average company? Are you below average company, or you are above average? So depending on where you stand, the quantum of savings will be different. Number one, I think we can recognize if a factory is already well-run factory where your efficiency is more than 93-94%, to get to 93, 94 to 95 is going to be a humongous task. But if your factory is running at 90% efficiency, to get it to 95 is going to be easy. So that's the first one in terms of where your baseline is. So we should be very clear that don't try to benchmark yourself with others without knowing where you are as a baseline from a savings perspective. Second is, everything can be converted into savings easily, but don't make it administratively so difficult for people that they lose time in converting what they are doing into money, savings. That should be easy. So lay very simple policies, and I'll give you an example, since you asked for examples. One is, the goal that was given to people was, can you reduce the furnace oil consumption in a furnace, right? Now people said, okay, I can. So we gave a goal saying that reduce it by 10%. So what do you need? And this has to be done through a database approach. You cannot just give your engineering suggestions on experimentation. Tell me how you are going to use data to reduce. So the team came back with what data will they require in order to achieve the 10% reduction in furnace oil consumption. And believe me, it just took them 20 days to tell us what sensors they need, where they need, and they gave us 20% reduction in furnace oil consumption. Because this is something that the operators and the supervisor can relate to on a daily basis. On the other hand, the other extreme of cost reduction is, how much should the budget for maintenance be reduced year on year? If your predictive maintenance of digital predictive maintenance is working, how do I reduce the maintenance cost year on year? So a very simple thing is, if I invest 1 rupee, I should at least get 2 rupees back. Digital investment. Otherwise, people won't invest. If you are going to invest in digital assets and the maintenance person is not able to reduce cost, believe me, you will lose interest very soon. So you have to really identify equipments where you have good data. For you to get good costing out of savings out of digital, it's very clearly linked to the previous question of quality of your data. Okay, do you have the failure history? Do you have sufficient data that is captured where you can predict how much improvement can you get, and then you get the improvement, convert that into how much addition of uptime did you produce, hence how much more production could you take out, and hence what is the additional revenue and additional EBITDA you generated. So the savings calculations can go from one extreme to other extreme. You should have a clear, very simple policy that people can use. Give them simple templates. That's what we have done. We have given templates to people on documenting what improved, and in the financial calculation happens in the back end. Hold people responsible for improvement of the small, medium, high KPIs. Have a policy with the finance team worked out very clearly how those gets converted into financial numbers. That's how it is. So it's not a simple answer, but you have to have cost savings at multiple levels. Reducing the number of alerts itself is a savings. Okay?
Absolutely.
Reducing, making sure your productivity on day in and day out is consistently maintained is a saving. Making sure your changeover time reduces from 40 minutes to 35 minutes is a saving. Making sure that your raw material consistently feeds into the quality so that you do not generate rework is a saving. So I can give you multiple examples where savings can be calculated. but keep it simple to administer, effectively manage in the back end, give people very simple templates, and the quality of data is very important. For you to derive true savings, many times we get fooled by savings because the quality of data that you feed is so junk. Like we say, previous panelist just told that, it's garbage in, garbage out. So focus on quality of data, keep the saving to KPI at the floor level, convert it into financials at the back end, and keep a clear policy that helps a central team to calculate the financial savings and get it signed off by the finance folks to really make sense. You can declare crores and crores of savings from digital, but if it doesn't start to impact your EBITDA, the bottom line or top line, people will lose interest.
Absolutely great. I think these are very valuable insights and suggestions on how do you really get into the cost saving as a mindset, I think, which is extremely important. So Diksha, I'm also kind of looking at the time, so I don't know how much time we have, so keep us honest. So can we go ahead and ask more questions, or maybe open it up for the questions from audience, or? Okay, sure. Sure, so maybe we can have a couple of questions before we get on to the lunch.
Hi, this question is to Jagdish actually. Jagdish, you were talking about the shop floor automation, and you were talking about culture, because the automation or digitalization that happens on the shop floor is basically the culture, the involvement of people. So how is that happening in your company? How is the organizational development happening in your company to make or keep that culture in place for automation?
Okay, so there is again, multiple organizations do it differently, but I will give you how we approached it. Okay, so one is like you take a factory or a two where you identify whether the unit head or the factory head is really amenable to change. First, you identify locations where you think the people are willing to experiment and willing to fail, and then make it work and tell you, number one. Number two, identify the young guys in the factory, and we call them as digital ambassadors. The young people who are, in the age group of 25 to 30, and who are really naturally digitally savvy. We identify them, and then you are going to be the digital ambassadors for this factory, and then give them training on basics of data. Basics, what's a mean, median, mode, what is a box plot. So you have to keep them training, and then take that data, put a mentorship for them where somebody who knows how to run the shop floor with data is there to mentor them for 1 year. We actually mentored the factory. Every month somebody will go in and look at what data has been generated, how you are using it, what does the data mean to you, how can you improve. So they need constant handholding and mentoring, and use this 1 or 2 factory examples, then to take it to other factories, bring people from outside into these factories, show them what they are doing. It takes a lot of effort, but you have to really start with, hand-holding, picking up your best people, and creating some kind of a branding, like we did for, in our case, our digital ambassadors. Start from there, and also identify the middle management people who are good. There are a lot of people who are very data savvy. We probably don't use them because their data culture is not there, but identify some of your middle managers who are very good in analytics and data savviness, either because of their background, academic background, or they are naturally good. Identify them and make them as mentors for the youngsters, and give these mentors a training on how to review data projects, how to review projects, how to ask questions, what kind of questions to be asked. And once you do that, once you build this momentum, then they will pick it up from there and they will start improving.
Right, Jagdish. So is this documented in any given cases, basically? Because you are talking about a core team that needs to be developed at that particular instance, right? So how do you do that? I'm just a concluding question there.
So it's a completely a top-down involvement where the unit head or the plant head actually identifies these people, saying that these are my best people, and the entire process of inducting them, how we do the program, how do we train them, all of this, there is a clear-cut process that has been documented, and we also reward these people for doing good work. Even if small improvements are there, we reward them. and we take them on to immersion sessions. So we do immersion sessions in factories where you bring people who are experts in technology and have one day, in terms of tech forums, right? You have a digital forum, immersion sessions where you show them what's the art of possible. And then go back and then say, what did you learn from it today? What are you going to improve in the next 3 months? So it has to be a constant engagement from a set of people. And definitely people would like to see whether their senior management is taking digital as a part of the daily operations or digital is seen as a side business. So the moment you see digital as a side business, you can be guaranteed that you won't go much further. So you have to help them to choose the right people and integrate that into the daily way of working. And it doesn't happen, okay? Yes, have you been successful in all the factories? No. We know maturity varies from plant to plant. We do measure the maturity on a monthly basis. And every factory sees where their maturity level is compared to other factories, and they learn. Believe me, people need to be woken up by one or two good examples, and the rest would not like to be far behind.
Thank you.
So
Jagdish.
running a movement.
Yeah, thank you, Jagdish. Vikram, question to you. I mean, is there any maturity index that you follow at Mahindra for IR?
Maturity measurement for what?
Maturity index, basically. As there was a question that was raised earlier stating, how do you ensure that there is an actual automation that is happening in terms of digitalization in the factory? So is there any maturity index that you follow so that we ensure that, yes, you are actually following that IR 4, IR or 5, what is required to be done? So there is a benchmark, right? So we call it as a maturity index, maybe for the automation part. Is there anything as
That's
a benchmark?
Good thought. We as much as I know, I work for farm division, so we don't have a digital capability or digital maturity index where we benchmark us against our industry or peers on digital maturity.
Thank you.
So maybe I can answer this question. So
yeah, please.
While there are many maturity models which are available, the one which at least I use is the SIRI. I mean, you're not sure whether you've heard of. So SIRI is a Smart Industry Readiness Index that was created by Singapore Economic Development Board working with McKinsey, and now it has been opened up and handed over to the World Economic Forum. So this has become like the framework for assessing the digital maturity across all levels of the organization. And broadly, there are three main pillars under which the digital maturity assessment happens. So first one is basically on the process side, second is on the technology side, and third one is on the organization structure side. And which is what I think when Mr. Jagdish was highlighting about the organizational aspect of it, correct? So when you are doing the assessment, you have to consider all of these three. How strong are your processes to support the digital initiatives? What is the level of technology that you are using and the kind of technologies that you are using, and whether it will support your future initiatives or not? That's the second element. And your organization structure, how strong they are, whether there is a learning culture, is there, the digital skills are there, people understand it, correct? So you have to look through these three aspects and then basically come up through a assessment of where you stand. And the SIRI, basically the advantage of SIRI is it also provides a benchmarking of you versus the similar level of industries what you have in the country and globally also, because there is a huge database. Like every day there are some or other assessment which is going on, and it gets into a centralized database through which basically you could also do a comparison of yourself with the other industries and the companies in your industry. So then you will get to know how forward or how back you are, and that's where then you can plan your future initiatives and the future journey. So I mean, I really like this framework. So I'm a certified assessor also for that. So that's
if you do not mind, can I just show an operational dashboard while I agree what you are saying, Siri. Can I just show them an operational dashboard if you don't mind? How we measure? Very simple. I don't know whether we're running out of time, but can I take a few seconds?
Absolutely.
Sure. Just to add to Siri.
I hope you're able to see my screen now. You're able to see?
No, not yet.
No?
Maybe the
Not
text
able to
is,
see?
No, you have to share the entire screen, it seems. Yeah, to Siri, you said the three parts, organizational structure, resources, as well as the culture.
organizational
Are you able to
structure is
see?
the one, technology and the process is the
Technology and the person.
Are you able to see?
Yeah, inverted actually. The screen, yeah.
Is it appearing or it's
No,
not?
no,
It is appearing, but it is inverted, yeah.
It is
Oh, is
basically,
it?
A image.
text is
A mirror
maybe
image,
something
yeah.
in the projection, so.
Okay, so never mind. I think we'll just not try the technology right now.
Thank you.